Okay, welcome to this next video where I intend to explain you the next step for the formative project formulation. This step is hypothesis formulation, applying research method and thinking design focus. Well, basically we are not going to deep to dive deeply in thinking design and in research method. We are going to see that thoroughly in order for you to look a little bit deeper and extract the specific aspects in the focus of the thinking design and in the research method in order to formulate a good hypothesis. That is the idea. First of all, when we think about an hypothesis, we think about a statement where we are saying that something positive or something negative about something, that doing something causes something, and then we have to prove that. So the idea is that we move from the problem now to the solution. Now, really, we are working on a specific solution of the problematic situation you worked before. So first of all, let's remember that we are working on a formative project. This formative project has a lot of steps, and also we have to move faster because time is running up right now very fast. So we have just worked on the brainstorm sensibilization and research. We worked on the logic framework analysis. We have just realized which is our problematic situation, our necessity or our opportunity from a specific general topic we have just selected. And now we're going to state that hypothesis. We're going to see, okay, we have this specific problem. We have a problem that in our high school, we don't have an international exchange program. That is not a problem. That is an hypothesis. An hypothesis is if we have an international exchange program in our high school, then the principles of the positive action leadership will be improved. Okay, so then to prove that, in the next step, which is the survey design and interviews, you will have to prove that with a specific methodology and trying to obtain a little bit of feedback from the community. And then you're going to analyze that, and then you're going to say, okay, it's a good idea or it is not a good idea. Maybe we are thinking that it's a very good idea, but it's not feasible because the authorities don't think that it's feasible. Maybe, no? So it's the idea. So that's the hypothesis. Okay, so first of all, we have to pose a question. What is an hypothesis? What is a hypothesis? So a hypothesis is the center of our work here. And a hypothesis also is the center of research method, and also is the center of a lot of changes that the world has lived in the past centuries. Why? Because with hypothesis, we're trying to prove something. And we are beginning with a problematic situation that in your case, you have just posed your problematic situation. And then with that problematic situation, you are going to state something that you will have to prove that in order to see that your hypothesis is true or it's false. So a hypothesis is a statement that is based on limited evidence, and also a hypothesis maybe can be obtained by quantitative or qualitative methodology, but in research methods it must be explained scientifically. In this case, we are going to try to reproduce a very empirical exercise of proving your hypothesis in the next step of your formative project. But right now, you need to understand that a hypothesis begins with the selection of some variables, okay? So there are some variables that need to be explained by another variables, okay? We say, for example, academic performance maybe is explained by the number of hours dedicated to study. Also, it must be explained by motivation of a student, and it must be explained by the content of the teacher used in the classes. And also it could be explained by the form of the content. Maybe if it's synchronic, if it's asynchronic, if the video is a lot of time long, or if it's short time long, and a lot of variables are going to explain academic performance. So you will have to think of a solution. Now you're going to think of a solution. You're going to think of maybe you select a cause of your tree problem, and that is your problem. Maybe it's your main problem, and that is your problem. But taking that problematic situation, then you're going to say, okay, for this problematic situation, that maybe is that the school is losing opportunities to excel or to perform in a better way in an international perspective with cultural interchange with other countries. So that is maybe the problem you selected. So an hypothesis could be that an international exchange program will excel or will improve the positive action leadership perspective of the high school. No? So you have to prove that. You have to prove if the communities think that, maybe in a qualitative perspective, maybe in a quantitative perspective. Then, so that is the three parts. First, the problematic situation, then the solution thinking. That's where you will need research focus or thinking design focus, and then if it's valid or it's not valid. So, the example of an hypothesis formulation, another example. You have a problem, for example, low impact of sustainability projects in the school, okay? If there is any sustainability project. So that is a problem. So then you have to ask yourself a what if question. For example, what if we design and implement an environmental education program in Prepa? And then you formulate your hypothesis. And you say, okay, the design and implementation of an environmental education program in Prepa Morelia will increase the impact of sustainability project. And you have to try to prove that. Okay, so our formative project is related with the research steps. So let's see that. For example, you began with the problem statement, problem identification, then you try to understand the problem with causes and consequences, and then you transform that problem in a positive perspective. So that is one of the first steps of research, which are problematic situation, research questions, dependent and independent variables which are related to the problem, and research objectives. Those 4 parts of our research are related to the first part of your formative project, which is problem objective tree. When you study in university, your bachelor and then your master's degree and then maybe a PhD, all that process you will be involved in research steps. You will learn how to state a problematic situation, how to formulate questions, and then how to identify the variables that are related to that problem. And your research objectives in your thesis are very important, your general and specific objectives. So now we are doing that, but in a very basic and general structure, which is the tree and objective problem. An objective tree and objective tree. Problem and objective tree, sorry. So then the hypothesis definition could be, for example, the theory framework related to the variables of a study and the hypothesis to be proved. In this case, your theory would be all the information you get around the problem, no? All the information around the problem of deforestation in the neighborhood, no? Or the intercultural situation around what you want to do, or whatever you define as your problem. There is a theory framework around it. So we are going to synthesize it only with the hypothesis definition. Then in research step we have methodology, which has the steps you use. The methodology is aligned also with the theory, because the theory gives you the methodology, what tools, what aspects of the theory are going to be measured, and how you're going to measure all those variables, how you are going to collect data, and then you're going to collect data and analyze that data in the research steps. And then you're going to produce a survey and an interview. That is almost the final step. And then finally you're going to analyze that results of your survey, and maybe you will discover that your hypothesis will be rejected, or maybe your hypothesis is accepted. Okay, so those are the results and the conclusions of that hypothesis. And in the research, you obtain some research results which are important in the scientific methodology process. Okay, so in the formative project we are using kind of that methodology. And another focus that you will have to research on, there is a lot of information. There is a page there, DS School Stanford is a page from Stanford with a lot of information, because they were the creators of this methodology, this powerful methodology for innovation, for creativity processes, which is the thinking design. We are not going to enter the thinking design deeply. Some of you in the last 1 year course, we saw a little bit of empathize and define, but you only have to know that this thinking design process is involved in, first of all, understand the problem in the perspective of the people or the community or which are around that problem, which are suffering that problem, or which are inserted in the problem. So with that in mind, we need to design the process of constructing the hypothesis, trying to empathize, trying to ask somebody about the problem, and then define, ideate, prototype, and test. That is the thinking design process, which goes in a process. Okay, so the thinking design try to answer these 4 questions, going through the steps. And the thinking design uses a lot of the storytelling, you know? Trying to have a storytelling of the problem in order to obtain, empathizing, and defining, ideate, prototype, and then test. So now the idea is try to empathize and define. That's all. Ideating, prototyping, and testing, we are going to do that in the next semester, but now try to empathize and define in order to define an hypothesis that you will try to see that hypothesis by designing a questionnaire or an interview. So, who you are solving for, what their needs are, how you solve them, and why your work matters. Okay? So the thinking design is a framework for innovation. It empathizes what is the problem, define the challenge, explore the human context. Okay? It ideates what is important, prototype, test, define. So it's a process of understanding really the context of the problematic situation, and with that understand how you're going to design a solution for that. Okay, a creative solution for that that is attainable, that is realistic. Okay? So that is define the problem. You have just defined the problem, collect information. You have just a little bit of collection, not a lot, but maybe you have to collect a little bit more. Brainstorm. I hope you did a little bit of brainstorm and you have some problems. So now you have to do a little bit more of brainstorm and try to see how you're going to solve that problem with a process of asking, of empathizing to the people with the problem. So what are you going to do? You're going to write a report. You're going to explain the process to obtain the hypothesis very briefly in no more than half a page or a page, no more, 2-3 paragraphs. Then the thinking design focus in the formation of the hypothesis. So you will have to look up and research about thinking design. See videos, read some information, and understand what is a thinking design, and then ideate with your team how you are going to use the thinking design focus for your hypothesis formation or formulation. And then you're going to state your hypothesis. Your hypothesis should be no more than 2 lines, very clearly stated. And there must be some variables that you would like to prove. That variables are the dependent and independent variables. So you have to, the variables must be very clear. It is recommended also to state your hypothesis. So you can write down which are the variables of your hypothesis, and then those variables are going to be used in order to formulate the questions you are going to design in the survey or in the interview in the next step. So it's very important to identify the variables of your hypothesis, and then you're going to write down some conclusions. So that's all. That's all what you have to do, but you have to do it with good quality. Okay? Explain the process, research about thinking design, and then write down how you use thinking design in the formation of the hypothesis. And then finally, you're going to state your hypothesis and state which are the variables involved in the hypothesis and conclude the activity. And that's all your report.